Smirk slowly appeared on the judge's face. It wasn't loud at first. Just a small laugh, barely hidden, but enough for people in the courtroom to notice. She leaned back slightly, glanced at the prosecutor, and shook her head as if the outcome was already obvious. The young man felt it immediately. He had felt it his whole life. That look. That laugh. The look that said you don't belong here. The laugh that said you're already guilty in my eyes. He stood there silently as the charges were read. The accusation was serious. Something he never imagined would happen to him. He had been at the wrong place at the wrong time, and now his entire future depended on someone who had already decided who he was based on how he looked and how he spoke. The judge interrupted him when he tried to explain, waving her hand dismissively. She made a comment under her breath, one that made a few people in the courtroom uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. She questioned his education, his job, even his background in a tone dripping with sarcasm. Every answer he gave seemed to amuse her more. The laughter returned, louder this time, echoing slightly in the courtroom. For her, it was entertainment. For him, it was humiliation. But what the judge didn't know was that this young man had been silent for a reason. He wasn't unprepared. He wasn't weak. He was patient. As the proceedings continued, the defense attorney asked for permission to present evidence. The judge sighed dramatically, as if annoyed at having to waste more time. She allowed it with a careless nod, still confident that nothing would change her mind. That confidence would soon disappear. The first piece of evidence was a video. The screen flickered to life. At first, it showed a street, busy with people and cars. Then, slowly, the moment of the alleged crime appeared. The judge leaned forward slightly, still relaxed, still smiling. But as the video played, something changed. The person committing the crime was clearly visible. It was not the young man standing in front of her. The courtroom grew silent. The judge's smile faded just a little. She adjusted her glasses, leaning closer to the screen. The defense attorney paused the video, zooming in on the face of the real culprit. The resemblance was impossible to deny. Different height. Different build. Different face. The judge shifted in her seat. Then came the second piece of evidence. Phone records. Location data. Time stamps. Every single detail placed the young man miles away from the scene at the exact time the crime occurred. The prosecution began to look nervous. Papers shuffled. Whispered conversations filled the room. The judge cleared her throat. For the first time, she looked directly at the young man. Not with laughter. Not with sarcasm. But with uncertainty. The defense attorney continued. Witness testimonies were read aloud. One by one, people confirmed seeing the real suspect. One witness even described how the young man had tried to help after the incident, calling for assistance instead of running away. That was how he became involved. That was how his life was nearly destroyed. The judge's face changed color. The power she had felt minutes earlier was slipping away. The confidence. The arrogance. The belief that she could see truth without listening. It was all crumbling in front of everyone. Then came the final blow. The defense attorney requested permission to play an audio recording. The judge hesitated but allowed it. The recording was from earlier that day. A private conversation between officials involved in the arrest. In it, one voice could be heard saying they didn't need. Minutes earlier, she had laughed. Now, her hands were shaking. She called for order, but her voice cracked. The authority she once held so effortlessly was gone. She asked for a recess, something she rarely did. When she returned, her face was pale, eyes lowered. She looked at the young man again, this time with something else in her expression. Fear. She began to speak, slowly, carefully. She acknowledged the evidence. She acknowledged the misconduct. Then, unexpectedly, she did something no one saw coming. She apologized. Not the cold, forced apology people in power often give. This one was broken. Her voice trembled as she admitted she had been wrong. She admitted she had judged before listening. She admitted her behavior had been unacceptable. She asked the young man to forgive her. The courtroom was silent again, but this silence was heavy. Emotional. The young man stood there, eyes steady, heart pounding. This was a moment he never imagined. The person who had humiliated him minutes earlier was now begging for forgiveness. He took a deep breath and spoke. He said he accepted the apology, but he also said something that would stay with everyone in that room forever. He said forgiveness does not erase damage. He said people like him carry these moments for a lifetime. He said today it was him, but tomorrow it could be someone else who doesn't have evidence, who doesn't have a voice. Tears filled the judge's eyes. The charges were dismissed immediately. The young man was free. But the story didn't end there. News of the incident spread quickly. People were shocked. Some were angry. Some were inspired. Investigations were launched. The judge's conduct was reviewed. The officials involved faced consequences. A system that had failed was finally forced to look at itself. As for the young man, he walked out of that courtroom with his head held high. Not because he won, but because he stood through humiliation and let truth speak louder than prejudice. This story is